Hello, podcast listener. This is Marin Lauka, the owner of Yes and your alignment coach, here to guide you to greater authentic alignment in your career, your relationship, and your lifestyle so that you can experience true success. What you are about to listen to is a replay of my weekly Spark, which is a live video, a mini workshop training that I do every single Tuesday. You can always catch the video version on YouTube or Instagram. Otherwise, enjoy listening to the audio, and I will see you again next week. So I wrote my first book, and within 24 hours of sharing it with my audience, it became a bestseller. It took me 15 months from idea and outline to finished, published product. And today I am sharing the top 10 lessons I learned as a first-time author to becoming a bestseller. Before jumping into those 10 tips, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for free alignment trainings every single Tuesday. While you're down there, support this channel by giving this video a like, comment if you're especially excited about anything that I share today. And if you want your copy of Ready Enough, your 7-step guide for life's hardest decisions, click the link in the description. My name is Marin Lauka, and after receiving my master's degree in positive developmental psychology, I combined my academic traditional path to the certifications I had been receiving along the way in life coaching and yoga to create my business, Yes and, wherein I have supported hundreds of clients to clarify what they really are passionate about so that they can break through those fears and limiting beliefs to own their potential and experience a life of greater balance, fulfillment, and holistic success. And although I am a coach for hundreds of clients, although I am a best-selling author with an area of expertise, I, of course, am always learning as well. And let me tell you, this book writing process was definitely a learning experience for me. So let's jump into these 10 tips that you can apply either if you are an author or if you are in pursuit of any big goal. For simplicity's sake, I have broken these tips down into 2 categories. The first is getting it done. Tips for productivity and motivation to accomplish these big goals that we have in front of us. And the second are big lessons that I learned about the journey, that more holistic view of pursuing something great and achieving it. So starting in that first category, getting things done, tip number 1 is to find a feel-good accountability system. For me, that started with my author coach. Shout out Jennifer Locke. She is incredible and helped me to take this big idea, and in fact, multiple ideas of where I could have taken this first book and break it down into something that felt clear, that felt organized, and that felt manageable. Furthermore, because I had her for the first 6 months of writing this book, I had an accountability partner to check in if I had completed these little baby goals along the way. Did I write the first section? Have I been editing along the way? Once I was done writing my book, I then hired a publishing course, and that included coaches as well, to hold me accountable to this final step, taking what was a Word document and turning it into a published book. I have confidence in myself that I would have published that book eventually. However, without that course, without that type of accountability, it would have taken a lot longer. And for you, these accountability systems might look a little different. Maybe setting personal due dates for yourself is all you need to get these little baby steps done along the way. Maybe for you, just having the greater vision, which we'll talk more about later, about where you are headed and why this needs to come into the world or why you want it to come into the world is enough to motivate you and keep you on your game to finish all the way through. Lesson learned number 2 is to break things down into small, bite-sized pieces. And once it's small and bite-sized, make it even smaller. So for me in my membership community, I strive to do this for my members. In every area of alignment, we focus on 1 per month. I break it down into really simple, bite-sized practices. So I'm used to talking about this. And of course, as we have all experienced, implementing our own advice can sometimes be challenging, or maybe we forget to do it. So what I learned along the way is that not only did I have to break it down into, for instance, step 1 is to write the outline, and then I'm going to write the book, and then I'll edit it, and then I'll publish. That's breaking it down into smaller steps. However, even smaller than that, in that writing part, write chapter 1 wasn't even a small enough step. I had to say, I'm going to write the first section of chapter 1. Or I'm going to edit the first section of chapter 5 today and break it down so small that it doesn't feel daunting. That for me was the biggest element, is that if I just had edit chapter 1 on my calendar or on my task list, it felt overwhelming and therefore I wanted to push it off, or it just didn't feel fun to go into. Whereas if I had something smaller, it felt manageable. I felt like I could do it, I was capable, and therefore I was more excited to go into the work. Furthermore, what breaking it down into these bite-sized small steps means is that you get to celebrate along the way. This is actually a full stage in the 7-step process I talk about in my book, to celebrate. And we often forget to do that, or we wait until it's all completed before celebrating. And if we wait until it's all completed, maybe we'll only end up celebrating once a year. And honestly, that's just not good for our motivation. That's not good for our well-being. To build in these opportunities where you can celebrate because you have things broken down into these bite-sized tasks and you can celebrate after each of those tasks propels your motivation and continues the perseverance that is required to finish a big project like writing a book. My third lesson learned is to take boundaried breaks. Matt D'Avella is a fellow YouTuber who published a video a while ago that talked about the 2-day rule. Now, this isn't a concrete rule that everyone must adopt. However, the idea behind it is one that I really implemented in the book writing process. So what the 2-day rule means for Matt is that after 2 days, and he was talking specifically about working out, if he takes 2 days of rest, then he can usually get back into it on that 3rd day. But if he takes 3 days of rest or 4 days of rest or extends that out further and further, it's harder to then enter back into the work. So there's a few things to highlight here. 1, rest is vital. Rest is vital, especially when we are in the midst of such a big project. I absolutely had to rest during this process. In fact, around the holidays, I took multiple weeks off of my book editing process because that turned out to be one of the hardest stages of the journey for me. And if there wasn't a boundary on that rest, sometimes that momentum to get back into it can feel really hard or nearly impossible. And so to set a boundary for yourself and to be non-negotiable about that boundary, even if it means, for instance, for me, I had a certain date after the holidays that I was going to get back into editing. I edited maybe one section, potentially even half a section, but I edited something because I had made the deal with myself that I was going to get back into it. And then you can always set another boundaried break. But to stay true to yourself is really important to build that self-trust that we all need in these long journeys and to make sure that your momentum carries on. Lesson learned number 4 is to follow your energy. So especially with big projects that can feel extra daunting and projects that have a pretty linear pathway, right? I need to outline and then write and then edit and then publish. There was some logic to it. I put a lot of pressure on how I should get this done. If you've watched my videos before, if you have read about me on my website, you know that a big part of my coaching is to help you dismantle the shoulds, because oftentimes those shoulds aren't as concrete as we make them out to be in our minds. So for me, what this meant is that eventually I learned I don't necessarily have to write chapter 2 after I write chapter 1. If one day I was feeling inspired to jump to a different section of the book, follow that energy and trust it. What happened for me, the lesson that I learned, is that when I trusted the flow of energy of where I was naturally inclined to go, everything got done eventually. Maybe not in that linear pathway that felt easier for my mind to compartmentalize and organize. However, it still got done, and oftentimes more efficiently than had I sat myself down and forced myself to do what, quote, should be done next, instead of what I actually wanted to do in that moment. So to make this a little bit more tangible, going back to that second lesson, breaking things down into small bite-sized pieces, as you have those small bite-sized pieces either in your mind or maybe laid out in front of you, look at that list if you're ever not feeling motivated and ask yourself, what am I willing to do right now? What in this list does sound fun? And can I do that right now? Does it matter that it's what I, quote, should be doing right now or what comes next on this logical linear pathway? What if I just trusted that this is what I want to do right now and therefore run with the energy, and you'll make progress on your journey either way. And the last lesson I will share in terms of getting things done for big projects, such as writing a best-selling book, is to find your why. You maybe have heard this before if you're in the personal development space. Simon Sinek has a great book, Start With Why, and I found this to be really important. For me, my why was not only to share this message with more individuals than I have time or opportunities and resources to coach. I wanted to spread it to a wider audience. But also, I want to incorporate this into my speaking events moving forward, to have a takeaway that people in the audience can have, to have something where the individuals hiring me know what to expect and already have a taste of my expertise and the value that I provide. Furthermore, if you can incorporate a vision and a feeling into this, it's even more powerful. So for me, something I kept coming back to was a vision I had in a meditation actually years ago, where I was autographing a book of mine in the airport, specifically at Hudson Books. And specifically, the woman for which I was autographing my book has green eyes. This has yet to happen because my book was just published. And I think one day this might come true. And the moment it does is going to be amazing. I will certainly tell you about it. Whether or not that exact moment comes true, however, to have that taste and the feeling and the detail within that vision, to say, yes, I really know and I trust and I felt that call that one day I want to be able to sign a book that I wrote for someone that it helped in the Hudson bookstore in the airport. That propelled me through times when it felt hard, when it felt like I didn't know anymore why I was doing it. I came back to that vision, I came back to that feeling and those details. So create that for yourself, not only the why, but get really detailed about it. And along these lines, kind of a bonus tangent to this lesson learned is to stand in your worth and to stand in your vision. So something that happened to me at the end, and maybe you've seen my Instagram reels kind of making fun of this process, is that I hired one book cover design team who did a wonderful job, but at the end of the day, I just didn't feel like it lived up to the value of my book and that vision, that why, the where I saw this book going and how it could impact others. And although we don't want to judge a book by the cover, sometimes we do. And so I wanted to stand firm and say, these covers are great and they're really not aligned with the value, with the worth, with the level that I see this book going. And so I had to make a tough decision, follow my own guidance within that book, and hire a different team. I spent another $900. That's a significant amount of money to get another cover when I already technically had a cover made. And so along with this why, stay firm, stay true, stay aligned with your why. Don't waver from it just because it gets scary. And if it does get scary, turn to the 7 steps in my book, and I hold a lot of space for those fears and for the discomfort that comes up along these big journeys. Moving on to the second part, the second 5 tips, and these are all about the big picture journey. So lesson learned number 6 from writing a best-selling book is to get curious about others' success or others' perceived success. This kind of relates to the why in that it's a little bit of a check. What are you working toward? And is it something that you want, or is it something that you're perceiving from someone else? So something I learned in this publishing process is that becoming an Amazon bestseller is actually quite easy. So I said within 24 hours of releasing my book, I became an Amazon bestseller. And that's because I was really strategic in where I placed my book on Amazon. Some categories on Amazon, you only have to sell 1, 2, 10 copies a day to become a bestseller. That's not that many. And so, yes, I became a bestseller, and absolutely that is something to celebrate. And if I were to have had this bestseller vision on my mind as I was writing this book and held it as this big pedestal, this big, huge, challenging accomplishment, only to realize that it didn't take that much effort to become a bestseller, I imagine my mind would have gone through some hoops. I imagine that would have felt really uncomfortable, and there would have been some tension and some friction because I had put it on this big pedestal, or could have put it on this big pedestal, only to realize it's something else. I experienced something similar months ago when I had my first 10K month as a coach. I had held that on a pedestal, and it turns out that having a 10K month can mean so many different things. And now I look at others who are celebrating 10K months or $1 million years, and I just give a little bit of space to ask, what does that actually mean? Where are they pulling those numbers from? Because sometimes it can mean they made $10,000 in revenue, but after all the expenses and maybe there's some debt associated there actually wasn't any or hardly any profit. And that's what I'm actually caring about. Not the profit, but being able to live a good and balanced life where I feel safe and comfortable and flourishing and abundant, both in what I receive and what I share out with the world. And if all of that money went away, I wouldn't be able to share it out. That's a little bit tangential, but it's coming back to this idea, this lesson learned number 6, which is to challenge or get curious about the success that you are perceiving in your mind, because maybe it is a little bit different than you originally thought. Lesson learned number 7 is that sometimes we do not understand how it all fits together. So trust those instincts, similar to when I was saying follow the energy and what is calling you in this moment. Trust that somehow it fits together even if you don't yet understand. So remember I said with that vision, with my why, I imagined myself signing a book in Hudson Books for someone with green eyes. That came far before I had the opportunity and I had the space, thanks to COVID, to write a book. I didn't even have write a book on my schedule or on my radar until years later. And so to trust the process of, wow, I had this vision, I had this idea, I have this task that I want to do. I don't yet completely understand how it fits together, but can you still trust it and follow it simply because you're called in that direction? And that can be enough, which leads to lesson learned number 8, and that is it does all fit together eventually. So I can rewind all the way back to first grade when I used journaling time in the morning to write a version, my own version of Amelia Bedelia. I rebelled, as Marin classically does. You know about that if you are reading my book. I rebelled against the status quo to do something that I wanted to do. I could now look back in hindsight and say that was actually the beginning of my best-selling book, is writing in first grade. Furthermore, in high school, I had a teacher in the middle of social studies class tell me, Marin, I think you're going to write a book someday. And I had been writing blogs, a lot of blogs for Yes And. When I started the book writing process for Ready Enough, I had almost 100 blogs, and I used a lot of that material within my book. So I had already been writing my book, even though I didn't know that. So again, this tip, this lesson is that it all fits together, which can couple with lesson number 7 in that trust it will all fit together and you'll know someday how it all fits together, even if in this moment you don't understand yet why or how. Lesson learned number 9 is a total cliche, and that is it's about the journey. It is not about the end destination. I hope that you have experienced this in some way because I really think this is the ticket to living a truly fulfilling life. It's that to trust in the journey, to be in the journey, and to absolutely celebrate every milestone along the way, including those big ones, without becoming attached to those being your only tickets to happiness. So yesterday, for instance, the day before my book went out into the world, I had a really slow energy day. I wasn't very excited. I wasn't feeling the best. I took an hour nap right in the middle of the day, which is not common for me. And had I thought that yesterday was going to be this huge day and that day was going to make everything worth it, imagine if that's the day that I was banking on and then it ended up being this really low energy day. Furthermore, there is no way that I could have persevered for 15 months based on one day or one title, such as a best-selling author. For me, at least, it really required that I enjoyed the process. And this feeds into my final lesson, lesson number 10, which is the end is just another beginning. And this is something that I'm experiencing in real time, and it actually feels really good because I had learned lesson number 9 along the way. It's about the journey. So I've landed here at the end of this journey. I have a book. It is available to the world. It is a bestseller. I am so excited for everyone who is going to read it, for the feedback I'll receive, for the conversations these will start, for the new members that are going to come into this community. And if you can tell by all of those things I'm excited about, those are simply elements of my next journey. Now that I have this book, I get to share it with the world. I get to pursue those speaking events, those why. That was really the pillar, the center point of writing this book and organizing my area of expertise into a captivating story. I'm reaching out to podcasts. I'm looking to the next year to grow awareness of this book, to continue the sales and the momentum that already have taken off today. And again, this goes back to the idea that it's not really about the end. Because if I thought, again, that now I would just get to sit back and do nothing, and so maybe if that was my belief, I would have persevered through burnout because I had this idea in my mind that eventually I would get a break, only to realize that this is just the beginning of something new. That could have been catastrophic. That could have been the end of my energy levels, of my career, of my motivation, because I was grinding myself until I got that break. And if I don't believe there's a break ever, and rather build in breaks along the journey and always have this notion of there's always going to be something I'm pursuing, there's always going to be a goal, there's always going to be something I'm excited about that is right on the horizon, that actually fuels my motivation to continue. And that element of holistic success, it builds it into the process. Because if there's always going to be something, I'm not waiting for something else to happen before I enjoy what is here right now. And those, ladies and gentlemen, are my top 10 lessons learned from writing a best-selling book. Again, I broke it down, if you want to rewind, into 5 tips on how to get big projects done, how to accomplish those big goals, and then 5 tips on the big picture of what these journeys are all about, at least in my experience. In the description below, you can get this book, Ready Enough, your 7-step guide for life's hardest decisions, and I would be so grateful if you left a review on Amazon after you read it. I will be reading those and replying and thanking you. Reviews are like gold on Amazon. As you know, right? Whenever you purchase a product, you go right to the reviews. So that would be so helpful for the continued momentum of Ready Enough. If you are writing a book, either in the process or maybe you've published one, please tell me below. I want to encourage you. I know how important community and, again, that accountability is. So please let me know and I will definitely check it out. And congratulations. And lastly, if you enjoyed this video, like it, maybe share it with a friend who you want to motivate to write a book or pursue their big goal, and to receive free alignment trainings right here every single Tuesday, subscribe to this channel below, hit the bell notification to stay accountable to watch these trainings and transform your life one baby step at a time. Next week, I am sharing my decision-making game that came before I wrote the decision-making book. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you then.